Hello, hello, thank you for this. See Roger and James. First, we want to talk you on behalf of the ADF. We thank you very much for that. This conversation is a true honor, and this will be the first live feed of its kind of Argentina and South America.
Wow.
Yeah. And first, what do you do when you are not shooting?
What do I do? I don't know. I like to read a lot. I read a lot. And I like to go fishing, but that's when we're in the UK.
And you take pictures.
And yeah, sometimes I take still photographs.
Yeah, thank you. Which football team do you support?
What's this got to do with cinematography?
Well, it's very important, Roger, though. It really is.
Manchester United.
Thank you for that. What inspires you besides film, literature, music, painting, cooking, sailing?
What was it?
What inspires you besides?
Yeah, besides.
Well, everything really.
We like cooking, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, everything inspires, doesn't it? Your whole life experience inspires. Otherwise, you wouldn't bother. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
Thank you. You start as still photographer, and that love for textures still show in your work. From there, you move to documentaries. How did this influence your craft?
Well, I mean, you know, it wasn't a calculated sort of progress, really. I mean, I discovered I loved films as a kid, but you know, you never, I mean, back then you could never see it as a career. I mean, I just loved films. And I went to art college and I fell in love with still photography. And I thought that might be a reasonable sort of possibility of a career, you know, one way or the other. But I wasn't thinking about anything outside of my small perspective, really. And it was only through going to the National Film School, which opened up while I was at college, that they opened my perspective to the possibility of doing film. And again, it's still, I didn't feel I could do anything other than documentary work, which is kind of, you know, again, it's your perspective you have as you evolve, you know.
But didn't documentary work give you the ability of thinking about the cutting, because you only could get maybe 3 shots, and figuring out whether those shots would work and working on the fly? Yeah,
I think working on documentaries definitely sort of tunes your eye and your sort of sensibility as to how to capture a subject without just shooting it in real time. You know, filmmaking is about condensing, about telling a story with images in a restricted amount of time. So yeah, I think documentary really gives you that sort of sensibility, or helps you work that sensibility.
Yes. How did this influence the visual treatment of early works such as 1984 and Sid and Nancy?
I mean, I don't know how to answer that, because I don't know that it sort of did. I mean, the way I shot documentaries was very much coming from the way I saw things. You know, the way I take still photographs is very much the way my eyes work with my brain. I wouldn't say that documentaries influenced that. No, it was the way I am influenced it, both documentaries and those early features, and what I do today. You know, it's my perspective on the world, really, I suppose, without sounding pretentious. You know, I mean, I have a certain sensibility, a certain sort of feel for images and cutting, but obviously you know, I mean, obviously on feature work it's different. On documentaries I was quite often my own kind of director in a way, doing projects where there wasn't a director actually out there on the shoot. You know, it was me. But obviously on feature films you're working with a director, and you usually work with somebody of similar sensibilities, and it's a very much a collaborative process, and you come to the final result together, you know, with the director and many other people, frankly.
Thank you. How do you both choose projects?
I think it's story first, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you relate to reading a novel? You know, some very famous novelists I don't like their work. You know, I mean, you have a certain sensibility, don't you? You know?
And it's a long period of time to work on a movie, so you want to make sure that there's a reason. So
Yeah.
if you're passionate about the story, then you want to tell that story.
Right.
So that's number one. And then number two is meeting with the director and seeing if there's a communication between all of us.
Yeah. So yeah, it's exactly as James says. It's two things. It's relating to the material when you first read it, but it's also relating to the director and the team that are going to be involved in the making of the film. You know, it's not going to work if either of those things don't connect with you, you know, as a person.
Okay. What challenges are you looking for?
I don't know if I really look for challenges. It would be nice if things were so simple. But I think you kind of create your own challenges. Because quite frankly, a lot of projects you could just do by rote. You know, you could just put up a bit of soft light and find a pretty shot, and it's kind of easy. So don't you challenge yourself? Isn't that why you're doing it? Because that's the joy in it, to sort of experiment and challenge yourself, I think.
What's your first approach to the source material?
I think the first approach is to try and not get any fixed ideas until you sit down with the director, and the director talks about what his vision is. So you're working the same way, because if you start and you have your own thoughts and plans, they're kind of hard to get rid of at times. So first start with the director, so you're always going in the same direction.
Yeah, I think that's well put.
Okay. When the first images start to appear, what do they look like?
What do they look like?
Yeah, the
It's
first image.
It's kind of exciting because you've spent months thinking about it.
Oh, what? She's asking, what do they look like when they're kind of on a paper in your head?
Oh.
Yeah,
right, not physically in dailies. Right.
En la mente, in the mind.
You know, very much depends on the project and the way you're working, because, you know, I've been on some films where you don't have a preconceived idea and you're you're shooting the film with a handheld camera and you're shooting it as if you were shooting a documentary, and the whole thing sort of develops as you actually work. But there are films, obviously like Blade Runner to an extent, which are so worked out in advance that you have a very, very precise image in your head of what you're trying to achieve.
But sometimes you go round and round about how to achieve it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, you say, okay, let's try it this way in prep. And no, that's not really. And you go round and round until you wake up at 2 in the morning and wake me up and say, I got it.
And figure how to do it and what really works. Yeah, for you anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it varies considerably from project to project, and it's usually quite. It can be a very slow station, really, or it can be something that just comes to you on the day. You know, you could react to the set, the way the light falls on the set, the way an actor is playing a scene, and suddenly the whole thing can change and be something quite different than what you first imagined.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say also that one of the keys is building in that flexibility for most
I mean, I think
scenes?
that's really important. However much prep you do and however much you have something in your mind, you still want to be open to possibilities. I mean,
changes.
That's the fun of it, really. You know, I mean, I like prep. I like to have something in my head, but I'm always conscious that I don't want that to be set in stone. You know, if you've got storyboards, you don't want to have to say, "Oh, that's what we're doing," because that's what we've drawn. You want to react. You want to be reactive, not just.
Because when you go on the set, what the actors are bringing in is something new. What that prop that you might not have seen is bringing in is something new. So all of that is part of what the film's going to become. So you do need to react to that and not react only to something in the sterile confines of prep.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, James, for helping me. Which was the first film you worked together?
Well, I mean, we met on a film where James was script supervisor, and that was Thunderheart, a film called Thunderheart. But so we worked together quite a bit after that, either with James was script supervisor, or then later she would be involved in the whole process, even though she didn't have a role as specified by production, you know. When was the first time we worked where you were like titled as digital?
No, it took a while just because there was no time. I was just doing it all the time. And then they realized, because it would take the production 3 weeks to understand that I wasn't the wife that's just was there for the ride, that I was actually looking at the dailies every day and doing all this stuff.
And it was actually, it sort of started really, I suppose, when the DI came in, you know, when a digital finish came in, because the whole post process then got quite complicated. So, I mean, we were working together on Oh Brother, We're Up There, because that was a very difficult digital finish with a technology that was just, you know, just being born and actually, quite frankly, not really
ready yet.
Not ready. And, you know, then it just expanded. And obviously with digital capture, it's even a more complicated workflow. So there's that side of it.
It's that, and it's also the DP, when he's working, is thinking visually and thinking about the scene that he's shooting right then. And what I can do, because I know what Roger's thinking, because we've discussed everything, is when the production has a question about next week's shoot, I can go and take a meeting with them and explain what Roger's thinking. Or I also get very close with visual effects, because you know how sometimes visual effects wants to shoot it a way that's absolutely impossible. And so because I know about these things, I can go to them and say, well, what is it that you're trying to get? And then because I know Roger, I can say, well, what if we shot it this way? Wouldn't you get the same thing? So in that way, during the shoot, the relationship between the DP and camera department and visual effects is not a bad one. You know, I'm trying to keep them talking because it's so important for what ends up, you know, in the movie. And if you get to a point where you're just not talking to another department, it's not so good.
Yeah, yeah. So to get back to the original question, when we first started working together, it's hard to say because it's something that's evolved since we first met, and we liked working on the same movies because we liked being together. So, you know, that was way back when James was scripting, and then just the whole thing changed as the process became more and more complicated, and we realized what a benefit it was to our work and to our relationship if this is the path we followed, really. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well put.
Well put, Roger.
Very beautiful. Prisoners. What was your collaboration in Prisoners like?
In Prisoners?
Prisoners. Yeah.
Well, James and I, or?
But
yeah,
that's also the
you.
time we work with Denis. So
Yeah.
he's part of it too.
Yeah.
You know, and he's great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, what was it like? I mean, it was actually one of the nicer projects to work on, really. I mean, I don't know what to say about it, really. I mean, it was.
But it was good in that Denis was a new director for us. We really liked him, but he had never worked with us before. And because we have what we have, at one point right before production, there was some problem with a crane or not being available or something. And Roger was stomping around the office. He was not happy. And Denis, though, felt comfortable enough to come up to me and say, is Roger mad at me? And I went, no, he's just mad about the crane.
Just mad, I get mad.
But that couldn't have happened if I wasn't there because he wouldn't have had anybody to turn to. So I tend to be more the person that you could ask the question and not have to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that you're bad to deal with.
On the man who wasn't there, how did you select the film stock to shoot it?
Yeah, I mean, notice the question that you sent me written down was implying that we shot it both as a black and white film and as a color film, and we didn't. I mean, the fact was we had, in the end, to produce a color version for European release
to be able to
on video, or the possibility of it. But no, I mean, and I say Joel and Ethan and myself, we very much shot it as a black and white movie. And in doing tests, before we realized there was a commitment to produce a color version for VHS or video, whatever, in doing tests, we looked at between using black and white negative and using different color stocks. And then we looked at the way we could do intermediaries using a color stock. And frankly, I thought I didn't want a film that looked like an old movie. I didn't actually want the artifacts that you get with a black and white film stock, like halation and kickback on highlights and stuff. So, and I didn't like the grain. So we did a lot of tests and we chose a low contrast color stock that we could then do an intermediary on and produce more of a high contrast black and white final image. So it was a whole series of tests that we did with you know, any number of film stocks and intermediary stocks, because you had, you know, Agfa, Fuji, you had
back then.
Kodak, intermediary stocks that you could
And
manipulate.
didn't you find that the color stock gave you more gradation in the black and white?
Yeah, I wanted more tonality really in the grays, and I found using this. It was 200 ASA. I forget the number now, but it was 200 ASA tungsten stock that was quite flat, and using that, I could then do an intermediary that would give me the good contrast, but retain this wonderful range of mid grays.
Yes, it's very, 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 very good work for me. I love this movie. Making what is your relationship with visual effects?
Well, you know, it varies. I mean, I'm somebody that likes to do things in camera as much as possible, and I'm not a big fan of what the future looks like, which is sort of virtual reality kind of background. So I'm always pushing to do as much in camera as possible. But I think the really good effects supervisors understand that.
Yeah.
And they see that. It's like we were talking about preconceived ideas and being reactive to something on set. The more you preconceive and the more you build in it as effects, the less you're open to finding things happen on the day. And I think the good visual effects supervisors realize the benefit of doing that, the idea of spontaneity and of using the natural world, because it's not something you can replicate, because you can't imagine the kind of accidents that happen on a set. You know, you just can't.
Yeah.
Everything that you preconceive in a way is too perfect and becomes, in a way, becomes less human, because we are imperfections, you know. Things happen. So I love doing as much in camera as possible, but then we work very closely with the effects team, and
the good visual effects teams are excited about being able to put in invisible effects. I mean, they really get, because we do work very closely with them, they're very much a part of the process, and we talk about how we're going to shoot it, and they can chime in and say what they're thinking.
It's a collaboration.
Yeah,
but
I think it's really important.
But I think the one issue that we often come up against, and this is nobody's particular fault, and I've been aware of it as well working in animation, is that when you have a team of people, everybody has a particular sensibility and a particular idea about a shot. So if you have a sequence of live action and you're putting in backgrounds for that sequence, one person's backgrounds and the way it lit might be subtly different from the next person's and from the next person's. And if you're not too careful, you lose the original intent of the way it was shot on the day.
Yeah. And that happens a lot too because of the scheduling, because they tend to add visual effects during the shoot, and then the schedule becomes tighter and tighter. So in order to get a sequence done, they have to throw a team at it. They can't have two people doing it or whatever. They have to divide it up more, which is a difficult thing if the supervisor has not sat each of those down, people down.
I was saying on animation, it's the hardest thing when you've got people working on a film. They might be all in different parts of the world, but you've got to coordinate all that. And coming back to live action effects work on live action films, then quite often you see a shot come back and the background's been put in and the lighting's been affected by an effects team somewhere, and it might be really beautiful, but it doesn't work because it's not what you wanted, because it is beautiful and you wanted something, I'm thinking of Blade Runner in particular, you wanted something gray and smoky and rather ugly. But there's a difference between producing something that's beautiful and producing something that's right, you know?
Yeah.
So we're very conscious of wanting to be kept connected to the effects team as they're working, because there's a danger they go so far down the road that it's too late, you know, and you might get a sequence that is nothing like you or the director intended. And often you are the director's eyes because the director is doing, you know, voice, you know, recording and whatever.
Well, and it's
still
also
on the edit, you know.
because in cases where directors have seen the material and said, it's not right, do it again, and they're not sure. And then Roger comes in and says, it's not right, the highlight's too strong in the left, and this needs to come down over here, very specific, because he can speak their language and it really helps.
Well, yeah, again, a director doesn't have the time to study something. Usually it's, you know, post-production is a fraught process and nobody's ever got enough time.
Yeah.
So the director, say, is doing the soundtrack, working the edit, maybe even doing, you know, test screenings and stuff while the effects guys are finishing their work.
But oftentimes it also changes the cut, which changes the visual effects. And there's this whole thing about you can't take a long time in the DI. It really doesn't take very long to do a DI. It's waiting for the visual effects to come in. Because that's what you're always at the end. You're saying, okay, we're done, but we have to wait for another 3 weeks
so
as they come in.
The short answer, it's become quite an important part of post-production because even a small film that's shot in a real world and contemporary images often uses effects in some way just to manipulate a background or maybe alter a sky or something. And that can change the overall feel of the image.
And being involved in early stages allows them to make that change without it being a big cost. When it's down and you're in the DI and you see it and you want to change it, it's a bigger cost because you have to race through it, and it may not be possible time-wise.
Yeah,
so
right, too late.
You really want to view it as it's going along.
Okay. In some series of streaming platforms, the DP does not participate in that process. What do you think about that?
Sorry, can you?
Some streaming.
Streaming platform. Yeah, I've heard about that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that gets onto that whole thing about, you know, virtual backgrounds where a DP comes onto a set and the effects team have created these backgrounds, and that he or she, that DP, is stuck with something that is, I don't get that. I don't find that interesting at all, and it's certainly not collaborative, and filmmaking surely is about collaboration. So that is purely a financial decision, and one that I think lessens the kind of lessons of collaboration, but actually makes it more likely the product is just a product and not anything more.
Yes. How did you approach your work together to Blade Runner and 1917?
Well, they're fairly similar films in a way because they both required a lot of prep. On Blade Runner, James and I spent a long time with Denis in Montreal. He was working on finishing a film he'd done, and we were swapping ideas and storyboarding, and that was months and months in advance of the shoot. And basically did the same thing with Sam Mendes on 1917. It needed a lot of prep, and it needed, I mean, to visualize that, although the film, the final film looks, I hope, and think looks quite simple, it's actually was incredibly complicated to figure out how to create that world to look so simple. You know, every set, like every piece of trench had to be dug to a specific length with a specific camera technique in mind, and a specific move and a specific join where that piece of the shot would actually segue into the next piece. So everything, it took an enormous amount of prep and then an enormous amount of rehearsal with the actors to make sure that all was going to work for them before a spade was taken out and the trench was dug, or before any of the sets were constructed. They were all done in mock-up with the actors so that we could work everything out.
And it was amazing too, because we would be months and months and months ahead of when we're actually shooting, and they would have a group meeting and they would bring in the costume person, the makeup person, the prop person, which you normally don't see until a few weeks beforehand. And they had a say in what we were thinking. So the collaboration on that particular film was amazing, and I think it paid off a lot because all the departments knew what was going on.
So, you know, I mean, it looks like a very different film to Blade Runner 2049, but in terms of that prep and that collaborative experience, it wasn't. You know, they both required the same amount of effort in prep to get to that point where hopefully both of them look fairly effortlessly, really, don't they? You know, I think.
Yeah.
Which is it's the trick. You don't want the final result to look like it was a toil. You know, you want the final result to just flow and the audience to forget it. So, I you know, I think prep is really, a lot of prep is crucial on any film like that, you know.
After working in Time, you immediately approached Skyfall. How did you leap to the digital world in such a fast and fluid way?
Well, the funny thing was, though, that Andrew Nichol and I, we talked about In Time, and we originally only intended to shoot a couple of sequences digitally. And we thought we were going to shoot on film. But actually, all of In Time was shot digitally on the Alexa. So that really informed me when it came to Skyfall, and talking with Sam about the amount of night work, the amount of work in the sewers of London and things like that, where I knew I'd be working with practical sources and not really wanting to do kind of any sort of stage lighting, or, you know, it wouldn't be sets, and a lot of it might be natural spaces where I would be forced to work with practical lights, whether I liked it or not. Fact is, I like it. So you know, I ran a load of tests. We ran a load of tests for Sam, and would do these screenings where we wouldn't tell him which was which, you know, and things like that, just so that
So he was comfortable.
he was comfortable with why, you know. And it was the interesting thing with Sam. The one thing he wanted, the one thing why he went for digital was he felt that he could see the eyes of the actors better. And I think it was true. You could see into, you could see sometimes into the shadows under the eyes and stuff. And the eyes always seemed to pop better for him anyway. And I think it was true. So that's why we shot Skyfall digitally. But it was In Time that really, I felt doing that film, which was quite quite a fast shoot, and again, something that I lit a lot with practical sources and not with traditional film lights, whatever they are. And I thought that would be the way to go on Skyfall.
Thank you. How did you both approach use of infrared in Sicario?
The infrared.
Yeah.
That was fun, actually.
Yeah, how do we approach it? I mean,
Well, we found the camera, right?
yeah.
The clear camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
The idea of it came because I don't like shooting scenes in moonlight when there's no justification to have moonlight. And this night sequence, you know, all the guys were wearing night vision goggles. I said to Denny, but if they're wearing night vision goggles, why should the audience be able to see them when the audience doesn't have night vision goggles? You know, I mean, silly comment, but I said, well, you know, if we light it as though it was a traditional film moon, then it doesn't make any sense in the scene.
They wouldn't need the goggles.
They wouldn't need the goggles, so it's got to be really dark. Maybe we could shoot it as though it's all through the point of view of these different characters through the night vision. And Denny said, well, yeah, that works. I'm fine with that, but I want to know Alejandro, what his viewpoint is. So we actually need a different look for Alejandro. So I said, okay, then what can he have an infrared system? You know, I didn't know what existed other than seeing, I'd shot it before, but other than seeing the kind of consumer infrared cameras you can get to see if your wiring's okay in the house or stuff like that. And I think James researched into all this, and we found this company, FLIR, that has this very specific scientific camera. You know, it's very, very much used for scientific research and stuff.
But it had been used on one rock video.
And had been reused on a rock video by, I forget who, I didn't know who used it. But anyway, so we did some tests with that, and that's how it evolved. I mean, it is a color camera, but we wanted to use it as black and white because we felt the green of the night vision against the black and white of it, you know, would be a much more interesting look. And then there was one objective shot of Alejandro going in the tunnel, which was like against a blue night sky, a silhouette. And that was the one shot we did that was kind of a fake night shot, really. But everything else was done as this point of view.
It was actually really funny too, because all of the actors had props on, so they weren't real.
Yeah, they
night
weren't real
vision.
night vision.
There was no lighting, very little lighting. So they were basically blind and were going, go that way, and
Left
it was
of it, left of it.
rough terrain.
Yeah,
Luckily
they
we
could
didn't
hardly
lose
see.
any.
Yeah. Eventually, I did put up one little light. It was like a 1K on a 12 by 12 reflector, and it was about, I don't know, 200 feet away from the actual scene we were shooting. So it gave very, very little light, but it was probably just enough to help the actors see.
It was really funny.
That was funny.
What are your thoughts on the number of female DPs in our industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, what can you say? I mean, there's a number of women that are great DPs now, from Mandy Walker to Natasha Breyer. I mean, we all know their names. There should be far more, of course, but
It's exciting though to see more and more enter the business, because it's just another point of view.
yeah.
So we always
yeah.
enjoy seeing their movies.
But it's the same in all the grades through the film industry. I mean, it's tradition that the women work in the production office and they do hair and makeup. Well, all that sort of slightly breaking down now. Which I think is a good thing, you know. I look how many female directors there are now. You know, I mean, sadly it takes change. It takes time for change, but you know, history doesn't, you know, change overnight.
Yeah. No.
I wish. I mean, we could talk about Ireland, you know, if we want to talk about history. No, we better not go there. You know what I mean? It don't change, you know?
Yeah. There is a big debate, mostly at Imago, about the visual authorship of the DPs.
Yeah.
What are you think about?
I think you could include the whole crew in that myself, but I'm not. Frankly, I'm not somebody that wants authorship for myself. I do think it's a collaboration, and
there's two different things. One is, I think the DP should oversee the look, and that should be respected. But authorship is getting into another thing where you can claim that you own it, not the studio.
Yeah.
I mean, it's traditional for the studio to own everything, and so long as they respect the fact that the DP is overseeing the look, then what more could you ask for?
Which some of them don't, but if they did, it would be nice.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And if you were getting down to residuals, you know, I do think that's the way that's worked out is crazy. I mean, anyway, you know, I mean, kind of should be. I just think the whole setup's crazy. It's a hierarchical world, you know. I mean, whether it's the film industry or anywhere else, we still live in a world that's, has an aristocracy. It might not be the aristocracy that we immediately refer to when we think of Britain and its aristocracy and the monarchy, but we still have an aristocracy. In America, we have it. We have it every country. We have it in every work situation, and certainly in the film industry, it's hierarchical industry. And we all know there's certainly a lot of people that have very little influence on the end product of a film who get far more acclaim for that film than they really deserve.
Yeah.
And the poor gaffer or the key grip or the operator or, you know, the lady that keeps us going with coffee at the end of the night, they don't get anything. The actors up there, anyway, don't start.
Yeah, right.
Talk.
It's a collaboration. It's a team. Yeah. You know, one wouldn't happen without the other. You know, it's
Yeah. Roger's book, Byways, will come out in August.
In the UK,
Yeah. When we can have this work?
I think in the US it releases in September, and that's all I know. I've been trying to get a schedule from them.
Yeah, September sometime.
Yeah.
But it's got nothing to do with the movies. It's no behind the scenes, nothing to do with the movies. It's just my little personal sketches. So I don't want anybody expecting something it's not.
Oh, it's okay. We want to see your work. 50 years of pictures.
Well, yeah, there's pictures from when I was working as a photographer in 1970 and 71. and there's pictures from a year ago. There's just different pictures from different places at different times that I just felt kind of worked, that I like. They're just personal things, I suppose. They're personal images that somehow mean something to me. They probably won't mean anything to anybody. They mean something to me, so that's why they're there.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll, you know, it is what it is. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
Oh, it's
Thank
a pleasure.
Thank
Nice,
you.
nice,
Thank
nice
you.
talking to you.
Thank you very much. I don't know what to say. Thank you for all. Thank you for your podcast. It's very, for the students, it's very, I don't know, enriching. For us too. I think you are very generous with your time and what you do, and you talk to all people what they want listen. Is remarkable for me. I'm very generous, very, very generous. Thank you for that. Here in South America, in Argentina, we are very happy for this.
Good, good. Yeah, well, we enjoyed talking with you.
Bueno.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you kindly.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.